I've hooked a chain to half the vehicles in this county. I know trucks and cars the way some men know faces, by the dents and the bumper stickers and the way they sit on their springs. So the night I rolled up on a tow out by the interstate and saw my own wife's car parked beside a truck I recognized, outside a motel she had no earthly reason to be at, I didn't need anybody to draw me a picture. I knew both those vehicles cold. And I sat there in my wrecker with the light bar throwing red across the parking lot and felt the floor of my whole life drop out from under me at 1 in the morning. You spend 20 years pulling strangers out of the worst night of their lives, and you get to where you think you've seen every kind of wreck there is. You learn to roll up calm on twisted metal and broken glass, and keep your head while everybody else loses theirs. And then one night, you roll up on your own life in pieces in a motel parking lot, and you find out that all that practice staying calm on other people's worst nights was God getting you ready for your own.
I'm going to tell you up front where this one goes,
Because it's not where you might think. And it's the part I most want a certain kind of man to hear. By the time it was over, I lost the marriage. But I pulled the only thing out of that wreck that was ever worth saving, which was my 2 kids. And I did it without ever once poisoning them against their mother. And I want to walk you through exactly how. Where are you listening from tonight? Tell me. I like knowing who's out there riding along. And stay to the end, because the lesson I learned hooking a winch to the worst nights of strangers' lives turned out to be the one that saved my own family. And I think some of you need it. My name is Hank. I'm 44 years old, and I run a towing and recovery outfit in Nebraska. Just me and a couple of trucks and a kid I pay to take some of the night calls now. When you spin out on an icy road at 2 in the morning, when your transmission lets go on the interstate 100 miles from home, when you're standing on the shoulder in the cold with your hazards on and your whole day ruined, I'm the man who comes. I pull people out of the worst moment of their day for a living. I was married to Stacy for 12 years. We have 2 kids, a girl named Maddie who's 9, and a boy named Toby who's 6. I'm going to tell you how a man who recovers wrecks for a living watched his own marriage roll into the ditch, and how I figured out, the hard way, the one thing that's actually worth recovering when everything goes over the bank. If you're new to this channel, this is a place for the men who carry the load and don't get asked how they're holding up. The ones who keep their word, work the hard hours, and find out, one bad night, that the thing they were protecting was already coming apart. I'm not here to sell you anything or tell you to go scorched earth. I'm just a man who went into the ditch and climbed back out the right way. Telling it straight in case it helps you climb out too. If that's why you're here, subscribe and ride along. Because there's a man out there tonight who needs to hear this. And the only way it reaches him is people like you passing it down the road. Let me start with the trust, because you have to know what was solid before I tell you how it gave way. I was a provider, plain and simple. Towing is a hard living, and it's a strange one, because the work comes when other people's lives go wrong, which means it comes at all hours, in all weather, on every holiday there is. I ran a 24-hour service for years, just me, which meant when the phone rang at midnight or 3 in the morning, I got up and I went. Because that call was the difference between making the truck payment and not. I missed a lot of suppers. I missed a lot of sleep. I'd be out on some frozen county road at 4 in the morning, winching a stranger's pickup out of a creek while my own wife slept warm at home. And I told myself that was love, that a man who'd do that for his family had done his whole job. Hold on to how much I was gone in the dark, because the same nights that paid my bills were the nights that gave my marriage all the room in the world to go wrong without me ever seeing it. There's a cruel joke buried in my whole story, and it's this. I was so good at rushing out into the night to rescue strangers that I never once noticed the people I loved most were going under the water right there in my own house, in the daylight, while I slept off the night shift. A man can be a hero to the whole county and a stranger to his own kitchen table, and not know the difference until it's nearly too late. Stacy and I started with about nothing. I had one old wrecker with a bad clutch and a dream of my own yard. And she rode along with me on calls in the early days, back when it was an adventure. The two of us out in the night, pulling people out of ditches and laughing about it over gas station coffee at dawn. We built it together. We got the yard, got a second truck, bought a little house, had Maddie and then Toby. For a lot of years it was good. The kind of good you stop noticing because you think it's just the weather of your life, and it'll always be fair. I'd have told you we were rock solid. I'd have bet the business on it.
I want you to understand the kind of husband I was, because it makes the rest land right.
I was loyal and I was steady and I worked myself to the bone, and I genuinely believed that was the whole job. Where I come from, a man shows love by what he carries. He doesn't talk about feelings. He gets up at 3 in the morning and goes out in the sleet so his family has a roof. And that's supposed to say everything that needs saying. And it does say something. But I learned, too late to save my marriage, that a woman married to a man who only knows how to love by providing can end up feeling like a line item, like one more thing he's responsible for, like a truck he keeps maintained but never actually drives anywhere fun. I kept Stacy's life running. I forgot, somewhere in all those night calls, to be in it. I was a provider and a ghost at the same time, and the second one undid all the good of the first. Then, somewhere in the last couple of years, Stacy started changing, and I was too tired and too gone to read it right. She got into a fitness thing, a gym, a whole crowd that came with it. The early classes and the smoothies and the group that went out after. And I was glad, honestly glad, because she'd seemed restless, and now she had energy and friends and something that was hers. She started going out more in the evenings, which were the evenings I was usually working anyway. So it cost me nothing to say, go, have fun. And there was a name that started coming up out of that crowd, a fellow named Jared, younger, no kids, one of those men who's got nothing to do at 35 but stay in shape and have a good time. Jared organized the group runs. Jared knew a place. Jared. And then, the way it goes, Jared stopped coming up at all. And I was too worn down from the night calls to notice that a name going quiet is louder than a name you hear every day. I'll tell you about a warning I waved off, because it's the one I see good men miss every single time. Stacy told me, more than once that last year, that she felt old, that she felt stuck, that she'd gotten married and had kids so young she'd never gotten to just live. She'd say it light, like a joke, but it wasn't a joke, and some tired part of me heard it and chose not to deal with it, because dealing with it was hard, and I was already running on 4 hours of sleep. A man who recovers wrecks for a living ought to know that the warning lights come on long before the breakdown, that the whole point of paying attention is to catch the thing while it's still a noise and not yet a wreck. My wife was flashing every warning light there was. I kept driving past them because I was too tired to pull over. So that night, by the interstate, I'd caught a call to recover a car that had been left in the lot of one of those low motels out by the highway. A repossession type job, nothing unusual. And I pulled in with my light bar going, and as I was lining up on the car I'd come for, my headlights swept across the row of rooms. And there sat Stacy's car. Her car, that I maintained myself, that I'd know in a parking lot of 1,000. And nose to nose with it, parked easy and familiar, was a truck I'd seen around. A truck I was pretty sure I could put a name to, and when I ran the name in my head, it came up Jared. My wife had told me that night that she was staying over at her sister's. Her sister lived 40 minutes the other direction, and here was her car, at a motel by the interstate, parked next to Jared's truck, at 1 in the morning. While I sat in my wrecker doing the thing I do, pulling other people's lives out of the ditch. I want to tell you what I felt, and it wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't even rage, not in that first minute. It was the cold, flat clarity I get on a bad scene. The thing that kicks in when I roll up on a rollover with people hurt and there's no time to feel anything until the work is done. Some recovery part of my brain just took over and said, "You can't fix this right now. Do not make this scene worse. Get your job done and get gone, and figure it out clear-headed." So that's what I did. I hooked up the car I'd come for, the stranger's car, and I winched it up onto my deck not 30 feet from my wife's car at that motel. And I drove away into the dark, and I did not knock on a single door. Because the first rule of recovery is, you don't go charging into a wreck and make it a second wreck. You assess it first. You figure out what can still be saved. I'll be honest, the drive back to the yard that night was the longest of my life. I had a stranger's car on my deck and my whole marriage in pieces in my chest. And I had to keep it between the lines, because that's the job. You keep driving safe no matter what's happening inside you. I unloaded that car in my yard at 2 in the morning under the floodlights. And then I sat in the cab of my wrecker in the cold, and I let myself feel it for exactly as long as I could afford to. And then I put it away. Because I had 2 kids who'd be up for school in a few hours, and they could not see their daddy come apart. I went home, and I lay down next to a woman who wasn't there, who was 40 minutes away at a motel. And I stared at the ceiling and started doing what I do best, which is figuring out, calm and clear, how to get the people out of a wreck. And once I let myself look, the signs had all been there, everyone with a reason riding next to it. The nights at her sister's that had gotten more frequent. The phone that used to lie around anywhere and now never left her hand and had a passcode I didn't know. The new clothes, the new energy, the way she'd light up over her phone and then go flat when she looked up and saw it was just me. The gym crowd and the late nights that lined up a little too neatly with my work schedule, like somebody had looked at when I'd be out on calls and built a second life in the gaps. The way she'd stopped asking when I'd be home, which I'd taken for her getting used to the work and now understood was her hoping I'd be gone a while. The little distances, too. The ones you feel before you can name them. The way she'd started flinching when I came up behind her. The way our talk had gotten down to logistics. Who's got the kids? Did you pay the propane? We'd quit being 2 people and become a front desk passing messages back and forth. I'd had all the warning lights on the dash for a year. I'd just kept driving. Because pulling over meant facing what was under the hood. And what was under the hood was the end of my family. What I noticed in those weeks, watching quiet and clear the way you watch a scene before you commit to a plan, was that it wasn't only me she was pulling away from. It was the kids. The new life with that crowd, with Jared, it didn't have room in it for a 6-year-old who wets the bed sometimes, or a 9-year-old who needs help with fractions. So little by little, Stacy started handing them to me. She'd have a class, a night out, a thing she couldn't miss, and could I take the kids? And of course I could. Of course I would. I'd crawl over glass for those 2. But I started to see it for what it was. She wasn't just stepping out on her marriage. She was stepping back from her children, choosing a lighter, freer life, one skipped bedtime at a time. And the awful gift in that, the thing I'd come to be grateful for, was that every time she handed me those kids to go chase her new life, she was handing me the very thing I'd have fought a war to keep. I went to a lawyer that week, a steady woman named Pat, who'd done family law in our part of Nebraska a long time. And I told her everything, and what she focused on surprised me, because I'd walked in thinking about the marriage, and she walked me straight to the thing that actually mattered. She said, "Hank, the marriage is going to end, and we'll handle the money and the house fair and square. And Nebraska's a no-fault state, so the affair won't win you some jackpot. Don't expect it to. But you've got 2 little kids, and the only question in this whole thing that's going to matter in 10 years is, who's raising them? So let's talk about that. Tell me about the kids." And when I told her, the truth of my own life came out in a way I hadn't let myself see, because when I really looked at it, I was already the one raising them, more and more. I was the one doing the school pickups on the days I could rearrange the truck. I was the one who knew Maddie's teacher's name and that Toby was scared of the deep end. Stacy, deeper and deeper into the new life, into Jared, into the crowd and the nights out, had been pulling away from the daily grind of it for months, leaving the kids with me more and more, missing this and skipping that. Pat looked at me and she said, "Hank, courts here decide custody on the best interest of the child. And one of the biggest things they look at is who's actually been doing the parenting, who the kid's real anchor is. From what you're telling me, that's you. So whatever else happens, we are going to make sure those kids stay with the parent who's been showing up. The rest of this, the house, the money, that's just metal. The kids are the people. The kids are the people." She didn't know she'd said the truest thing in my whole trade. You don't save the truck, you save the people. So I did it the way I do a recovery. Careful, planned, no panic. On Pat's advice, I didn't move out, didn't blow up, didn't touch the joint money, didn't do one thing a court could use to call me the unstable one. She was firm about that, the way every good lawyer is. "Don't leave the house," she said, "because the parent who leaves looks like the parent who left the kids. Don't badmouth her, especially not to the children, because a judge can spot a parent poisoning the kids from across the courtroom, and it will cost you everything. Don't try to catch her or confront her or play detective. Just live your life and keep being the steady one, because steady is the whole case." I started keeping a quiet, honest record, not to weaponize, just the plain truth of who was doing the pickups and the bedtimes and the doctor visits. Because Pat said the truth written down beats anybody's story in a courtroom. And I made a decision right then that I want to tell you about. Because it was the hardest one and the most important. I decided I was going to restructure my whole life around being there for those kids. I hired that young driver to take the bulk of the night calls. I gave up a chunk of money, real money, the overtime and the premium night rates that had paid for everything, to be home for supper and bedtime, because Pat had shown me the only math that counted, and it wasn't dollars. It scared me, I'll tell you. The night calls were the heart of the business, and handing them off meant trusting somebody else and making less. And there were a few months there where the books were tight, and I wondered if I'd wreck the company saving the family. But I'd finally understood something. For 12 years, I'd told myself that providing was the same as loving. And now, with my marriage in the ditch, I was learning the truth. That a kid does not need a dad with a fatter bank account. A kid needs a dad at the supper table. For the first time in my life, I put being present ahead of being the provider. And I want you to hear that it took my wife leaving for me to finally learn the lessons she'd spent years trying to teach me. I'll tell you about the night it almost went the wrong way in me. Because I think it's where a lot of men lose the thing that matters. It was after I knew, and Stacy still didn't know I knew, and I had Maddie and Toby with me for the evening. And Maddie, 9 years old and sharp as a tack, asked me where Mommy was, because Mommy had said she'd be home and wasn't. And I knew exactly where Mommy was. And there was a thing that rose up in me, ugly and tempting, that wanted to tell that little girl the truth, to let her know what her mother was really doing, to pull my kids onto my side of the wreck. It would have been so easy. It would have felt, for about 10 seconds, like justice. And I looked at my daughter's worried face. And I want to tell you what stopped me, because it's the thing I most want you to take with you. I thought about who Maddie would be in 20 years if I made her carry the truth about her mother at 9. I thought about how a kid who gets used as a weapon between her parents never really stops being a battlefield. How she'd grow up with a crack in her that I'd have put there myself, in the name of getting back at Stacy. And I understood that if I did that, if I won my kids by poisoning them, I'd be doing them more harm than their mother's affair ever could. And I'd be using the very people I was supposed to be saving as a tool against the wreck. The whole point of recovery is to get the people out unhurt. You do not get to bang them up worse in the process and call it a rescue. So I knelt down and I told Maddie that Mummy had something going on, but that Mummy loved her very much, and that Daddy was right here, and that we were going to make some popcorn and watch a movie, and it was going to be a good night. And it was. That was the night I learned that protecting your kids and getting revenge on their mother are two roads that run in opposite directions. And a man cannot drive both at once, no matter how bad he wants to.
When the time came, it didn't take a war.
That's the thing nobody tells you. I'd been so braced for a custody fight, for the ugly courtroom thing where they say men never win, and it just wasn't that. Because the truth on the ground was so plain. By the time we got there, Stacy had all but moved into the new life. Jared, it turned out, was a man with no room in his world for another man's 6- and 9-year-old. And Stacy had been making a choice, a little more every week, between the daily work of being their mother and the freedom she'd married too young to have. I didn't have to prove she was a monster, because she wasn't one. She was just a woman who decided she wanted her own life more than she wanted the grind of mine. And the court did the simple, sane thing. It looked at who'd been raising those kids, who'd reorganized his whole livelihood to be at the supper table, who the kids ran to when they were scared, who knew the teachers and the bedtimes and the fears. And it gave me primary physical custody. I want to say something to the men who are sure that's impossible. Because I was one of you. I'd heard my whole life that a father doesn't stand a chance in a custody case, that the deck is stacked, that you might as well not try. And maybe there's truth in that some places and sometimes. But I'm telling you what happened to me in a plain Nebraska courtroom, which is that when one parent has quietly become the anchor and the other has quietly drifted off, a judge can see it, and the law's actual standard, the best interest of the child, pointed straight at the parent who'd been showing up. I didn't win because I was a man, or in spite of being a man. I won because I was the one who'd been there, and I'd made good and sure, in the months before, that I really was. The court just confirmed the truth I'd already built with my own 2 hands at the supper table. Stacy got her parenting time, generous time, the door wide open, because I made sure of that. Because they need their mother. But the kids' home, their anchor, their every ordinary day, that was going to be with me. And here's the part about justice, since I know that's what some of you came for. I didn't have to engineer a single bit of it. Stacy got the life she chose, the freedom, the nights out, the man with no kids. And she also got to be a part-time visitor in her own children's lives. To miss the school plays and the lost teeth, and the ordinary Tuesday nights that are what being a parent actually is. To hear about her kids' days secondhand instead of living them. The thing with Jared, I'll tell you, did not last. Because those things built on running away from your life almost never do. And when it ended, she was left with neither the freedom nor the family, holding exactly what she'd traded everything for. Which was not much. I took no pleasure in that. And I want to be honest about why. Because it's the heart of the whole thing. It would be a lie to say a part of me didn't notice the scales come level on their own. But I'd learned, hauling wrecks for 20 years, that you do not stand around the ditch admiring the damage. You get your people out and you go, and you leave the wreck for the daylight and the insurance man. Stacy's wreck was hers to sit in. Mine to do was get Maddie and Toby up the bank to safe ground. And once they were safe, there was nothing in me that needed to climb back down into the ditch to watch their mother suffer. I never said an ugly word about her to those kids, and I never will, and the door to them is always open to her, because the best thing I can do for Maddie and Toby is let them love their mother, even when their mother made herself hard to love. That's not weakness. That's me saving the people, all the way down to the bottom of it. I won't pretend I came through clean, and I'll own my peace, because a man always has one. I was gone too many nights, and I told myself the night work was love, when really it was just easier than being home and present and doing the harder work of seeing my wife. She'd told me she felt stuck and unseen, and I drove right past it because I was tired. And a woman who feels invisible long enough will eventually go somewhere she gets seen, and it won't be by you. Her choice to do it the way she did, sneaking and lying with my kid's mother's face, that was a cruelty all her own that I won't excuse. But I'd left the door to it open with years of being a ghost in my own house, and a man who won't admit his part learns nothing and wrecks the same way twice.
And I'll be honest with you about how hard the new life was at first.
Because I don't want any man hearing this to think stepping up is easy, or that it feels like winning at the time. It didn't. It felt like drowning. I did not know how to do a 9-year-old girl's hair, and the first few weeks, Maddie went to school with it looking like I'd done it in the dark of a truck cab, which I about had. I burned the grilled cheese. I forgot a permission slip, and my girl cried. And I sat in my truck afterward and cried too, because I felt like I was failing them on top of everything else. I learned to braid hair off a video on my phone at midnight after the kids were asleep. A big tow truck man with grease under his nails practicing on a doll's head. And I am not ashamed to tell you that I learned the lunches and the bedtimes and which stuffed animal Toby could not sleep without. I learned that being a parent isn't the big, heroic stuff. It's 10,000 boring, tiny acts of showing up. The exact thing I'd skipped for 12 years, thinking the paycheck covered it. It was the hardest work I have ever done. Harder than any wreck I ever pulled out of any ditch. And it was the first work in my life that ever felt like it was actually the point. So here's what a tired wrecker driver would tell you tonight, for whatever it's worth. You don't save the truck, you save the people. I have pulled 1,000 vehicles out of 1,000 ditches, and the first thing they teach you, the very first thing, is that the metal does not matter. A truck can be totaled, bent past all saving, and if the people walked away from it, that's a good night. That's a win. That's the only win there is. You do not climb down into a wreck to save the bumper. You climb down to get the people out and up the bank to safety, and you let the metal go. My marriage was the totaled truck. It was bent past saving, and there was no winching it back onto the road. And for a while I grieved it like it was the thing that mattered. But it wasn't the thing that mattered. My kids were the people. And the only recovery that counted, the only one, was getting those two up out of the wreck and onto safe ground, and leaving the rest of it down in the ditch where it landed. You can lose the truck and still win the night. Don't ever get those two backward. And I'll say one more thing to the man out there tonight who's sitting where I sat, who just found out, who's got that cold drop in his stomach and a head full of revenge and fear about losing his kids. I know it feels like the whole world is ending, like the wreck is everything. It isn't. Somewhere in that pile of twisted metal there is a thing that's still alive and still worth everything. And your one job, your only job, is to find it and get it out clean. Don't waste your strength raging at the wreck. Don't use your kids as a pry bar against the person who hurt you. Figure out, cold and clear, what's still alive in this, and pour everything you've got into carrying that up the bank. For most of you, that's your children. Be the parent who showed up. Become him now if you weren't before. The court, the lawyers, the whole machine. It can mostly only confirm the truth you've already built with your own hands. So go build it. Save the people. The metal was never the point. I've still got my yard and my trucks, and I still go pull people out of the worst moment of their day. Though I take the day shifts now and I'm home for supper. Every supper. Because I learned what that's worth, and I learned it almost too late. Maddie's 10 now, and she's the boss of all of us. And Toby lost his front teeth and looks ridiculous and perfect. The house is louder and messier and happier than it's been in years, and it runs on one parent who's all the way present, instead of two who were both somewhere else. And I'll tell you the thing that still gets me, the thing I didn't see coming. I am closer to my kids now, as a single dad working day shifts, than than I ever was in 12 years of marriage, breaking my back on the night calls. I know them now. I know that Maddie hums when she's happy and goes quiet when she's worried. I know Toby needs 10 minutes to wake up before anybody talks to him. Things I never knew when I was the provider and a ghost. I lost a marriage, and I will not pretend that didn't hurt, that there aren't still hard nights. But I gained my own children, and I am not sure, if I'm being honest with you, that I'd have ever truly found them if the wreck hadn't forced me to climb down and carry them out myself. Tell me where you're standing when you hear this. And tell me, if your whole life rolled into the ditch tomorrow, do you know which part is the truck and which part is the people? I believe most of you know, down deep, even if the noise of it all has you confused right now. Save the people. Let the metal go and get them up the bank to safe ground, no matter what it costs you, because that's the only recovery that was ever going to matter.